From County College of Morris, this is CCM All Access.
Hello, and welcome to CCM All Access, the show that brings you news and information from the County College of Morris, students on campus, members of the community, people doing good things. I'm Mitchell Etta, and today we'll be speaking with CCM softball coach, Mr. Richard Vaccaro. Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you on the show.
Glad to be here.
So prior to this interview, I read a little bit about yourself and about your past careers and your public speaking skills. Tell me a little bit about yourself in that sense.
Well, my main primary career from the days I graduated from college was as an environmental engineer working for corporate America. I worked for companies including Exxon, General Electric, consulting firms, etc. Mainly an air pollution specialist, and probably a little more than 20 years ago, I started giving softball pitching lessons on site. And that became a second career, and the careers essentially have overlapped for about the past 20 years. Now, there's been a little bit more focus on the softball side. However, I also am an air pollution specialist, and these days of climate change, that's become a real hot topic, and I'm doing a little bit in that area. But the other thing, though, is the fact that I've been a men's fast-pitch softball pitcher, a former semi-pro pitcher, playing in men's league since I was 15 years of age.
So now moving on to the main topic of discussion today, when did you become coach of the CCM softball team, and why did you decide to take on that role?
Okay, well, I was involved previously as a fall softball coach in the fall of 2009 and in the fall of 2010. And previous head coach Greg Wardlow, who is a legend here, having coached for 17 years, he was the one who really got me started in college coaching. And then what happened was occasionally during the year he might ask me to come and pitch live batting practice. But then in 2021, in a COVID year, when the former pitching coach stepped down, he asked me if I was available to become his pitching coach. And I took on that role. And then when he retired, I interviewed and was selected for the head coaching position.
Did you used to play softball yourself? Well, you did mention you used to play softball yourself. For how long?
Many decades, let me just say. I played up till 2015. That's when the last of the modified men's fast pitch leagues had a league. Then after that, after taking a line drive in the ribs, I said I don't need to be doing this anymore, but I still pitch. And I pitched to my softball hitting students and to some of my pitching students, and I pitch live batting practice to our team here, which is sort of a differentiator. Mm-hmm. You know, in the past, I was an assistant coach for 3 years at Montclair State, and I used to pitch live batting practice just about every day. And that's something that few colleges in the country have the benefit of seeing. So.
Yeah. Now let's go back to college. Where did you attend college?
I went to what was originally the Newark College of Engineering, and they changed the name to New Jersey Institute of Technology. Received my bachelor's degree in chemical engineering, and I decided to go into a new trendy field at the time, environmental engineering. So I had one of the first master's degrees in environmental engineering there.
Well, that's great to hear. Have you coached at a different school prior to CCM? You said you have.
Well, I was the coach at the College of Mount St. Vincent, which was in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. Gorgeous section, gorgeous school. I loved the team I had there. And the coincidence was that in 2020, we actually played a preseason doubleheader at CCM. With the intention. Okay. We played on a Sunday. We were all excited because the following Saturday, we were going to hop on a flight, head down to Florida. We knew that CCM was coming to Florida a week later, and COVID hit, and they shut everything down on the Tuesday, 2 days after our doubleheader here. So for many of my players, the last college games they ever played for the College of Mount St. Vincent was here at CCM.
Was here. What is it that you look for in players?
Well, first thing is, well, you want to have a successful team, but also, we as college coaches are not here just to say how did they do on the field. It's can we guide them a little bit. So, you know, it would be nice if we had more time, but we want to find out what's your career? Where are you going? What are you going to be doing after this? Yeah. You know, one of my pitchers now is a nursing student. So the question is, will you continue to play after your 2 years here? Because it's very difficult for nursing students. And it's, she could, and I really do hope she does, because we don't want her 10 years down the road to look back to say, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah.
But as far as players, it's what is their intensity? What is their work ethic? Okay, are they willing to improve? These are all the important things. Wins are nice, but they're not the most critical thing in terms of a team. Now, building a team, number one, you have to start with pitching. Pitching dominates softball.
Yeah.
So if you have the pitching, hopefully the rest of the team can help round it out. And then from there, okay, how is the hitting? How is the defense, et cetera? And that's the biggest challenge always.
Yeah.
Now, an advantage I think I have is I'm a private softball pitching coach. Currently, I have 6 of my students pitching in college right now. One of my students is the #1 pitcher at Hofstra. Another is the #1 pitcher at Ramapo College. I have 29 students pitching on club teams. So the thing is that, pitching helps programs immensely.
Yes.
So.
Pitching is definitely a strong point. Pitching is something that you, like you said, you need to have foremost, and then the rest of the team does need to follow behind and help out right after. So then how does recruiting work for softball at CCM?
Well, the tough thing with recruiting was in the past, Greg spent a lot of time on recruiting. Essentially, this was suppose it's part-time job, but in Craig's mind, he was doing it full-time. So he was going to watch high school games. He was going to talk to club team coaches, talk to parents, et cetera, because this is a great option for those that are not exactly sure what their future will hold. It's a little more challenging now. COVID really made us step back, okay, in terms of the recruiting process, also the educational process, because there's a lot of the students that they're unsure what they're going to be doing. So the thing is that, our recruiting wasn't where it should have been, as Greg was phasing out and retiring, and I came on board, and it was a little later than maybe I would have liked to. So recruiting was real tough over the last year. Going forward now, my assistant coach, Mike Borazan, who is great and well-connected, and I have another assistant coach will be coming on soon. Our #1 job is to be recruiting and talking to the high school coaches. Now, the thing is that if you wanted to compare recruiting to other schools, for example, an NCAA Division I, II, or III school, realize that we only have the players for 2 years. So we have to do twice as much recruiting.
Yeah.
The other challenge is the fact we don't have dorms here, okay?
Yep.
Unless extraordinary measures are taken to try to house students. We have to recruit students that are within 1 hour drive. And even 1 hour drive is a bit much for somebody to come and play.
Yeah.
So how do you convince them? Well, the program for the last 17 years has been stellar. So they want to come, they know they're going to play highly competitive, and they also know that they have a future beyond this. And one of the things in terms of that is the fact that if you see where the CCM players do go beyond this. I mean, we had a great season in 2021 when I was a pitching coach, and players from that team are now at Drew University, Ramapo College, Mount Olive College in North Carolina, et cetera. So they're having great careers that all started from here. Also Montclair State.
Yeah.
So
is recruiting, you would say, is pretty successful then, because you could say we breed some pretty successful softball players.
Oh, without a doubt. Now, the thing is that, we're trying to, after a step back, partially due to COVID, we're trying to reemerge to say, okay, we're going to be very aggressive in terms of the recruiting in the county and within an hour's drive, which also touches on some of the other counties.
Yeah. So then what does a typical weekly schedule look like for a player?
A player essentially takes out the balls and juggles. That's what they have to do, because they have to worry about classes. They have to worry about attending classes, doing their homework, taking their exams, working. Every girl on the team works, and that's the tricky part. When we have rescheduled games, we say, girls, it has to be rescheduled. They're not overly happy because now they have to talk to their bosses where they work and say, can I do this, or am I going to economically have to take a step back for a given day or two?
Yeah.
So it's a real tricky balancing act. But on the other hand, as you mature and you go into the workforce and start families, it becomes a balancing act. So learning time management is one of the most critical things, and here it's sort of forced upon them. So
yeah, of course. What are some responsibilities the players should take on in the off season?
Well, in the off season, they have to keep themselves in shape. They have to keep themselves in softball shape. What that means is you have to physically be throwing, be hitting. You can't take 6 months off and then come back and expect to be where you're at.
Yep.
And with pitchers, they must stay active, okay? It's good to take time off. And with my private students, I tell them they need a couple times during the year where they just do nothing for several months to be able to relax their muscles. But in the off season, they have to be working.
Yeah.
I want pitchers during a season, preferably during a college season, you should be throwing 4 or 5 times a week.
Yep.
If off season, at least 2, if not 3. It's very tough because if you want to pitch, well, how are you pitching? Do you have a catcher? Trying to get a catcher is really tough for pitchers. Do you have a wall that you can throw against? Do you have a bucket of balls you can throw into cage? Is there something at your home? It's a really tough, challenging thing that you have to decide how important is this in my life.
It's very important to have a smooth transition into the season so that the players are already warmed up and have been practicing in the off season so that you have a great start to begin with.
Well, that's exactly the point. The point is that this is not the major leagues in the 1950s where the players had a second job working in a men's store or something, and they would come and they would spend, spring training getting into shape. Now, you need to be coming into shape from day one and to move from there.
So what does a general softball practice look like?
Okay, softball practices, once they show up, they do some stretching. They then do their everydays. In terms of throwing, they'll throw overhand. We do backhand throw, flips, what have you. Sometimes we'll do an interesting thing called the diamond drill, where the girls have to be throwing across the diamond in a random pattern. After their arms are loosened up, the question is, what are we doing on a given day? Are we focusing on hitting initially? Are we focusing on defense? Are we focusing on strategies, what have you? So it varies from day to day, and it's important because we have a whole laundry list that covers probably about 35 topics that we want to cover before our first games. And have we covered all those? Then you have to worry about, once you get the basics, now we have to worry about the strategy, the nuances. We were going over something that was a little tricky the other day. We were doing the base running approach that Patrick Murphy at Alabama essentially has espoused, which not a lot of teams do. And if you do it, you say it makes no sense, except that the probabilities say it works. So,
well, if it works, then it works.
well, you have to be pragmatic. And the thing is, you also have to know your team. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? All we want them is to improve from where they were, and say, well, okay, what areas maybe you're not as strong as you'd like to be? How do we improve on that?
Yep. And now we're going to take a break. Please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
I'm Andrea Lucia, a graduate of County College of Morris. At CCM, I gained a high-quality education, was involved with clubs on campus, and performed university research in tissue engineering. My CCM education prepared me for ongoing success. Today, I am at Cornell University, studying engineering and performing research in cardiac tissue engineering. The professors and staff at CCM helped me to start right and finish strong.
And we're back on CCM All Access. I'm Mitchell Etta, and we're here with Richard Vaccaro. So let's talk a little bit about coronavirus and how it affected softball. How did it affect the way that you coached?
Well, first of all, to start off with, when it hit and it caused the impacts in softball, I was actually the head coach at the College of Mount St. Vincent. Okay, and as I mentioned before, our last games were in March at CCM, and we were looking forward to going to Florida next week, and everything got shut down here, got shut down at CCM also. In terms of CCM, the season was lost, and the question was, what will happen coming back? Now, in the fall of 2019, I wasn't involved, or 2020 rather, I wasn't involved at the time, but I was keeping track of what was happening because head coach Greg Wardwell and I were talking about it because he was thinking about bringing me on as the pitching coach in the spring of 2021, and in fact, that's what happened. The question was, well, when can we get together? How do we get together? Do we have to be masked? What happens if somebody turns up positive? And there were impacts. The impacts were if somebody came down positive, you had to shut the program down for 2 weeks. And that did happen one time with the softball team. As far as practices, we were practicing early season in the gym with masks, except when you're doing something of a physical nature, then the players could take the masks off. Okay?
Yeah.
We were trying to practice social distancing as much as possible. We practiced it in the dugouts. We also had to be aware and follow the requirements when we had away games at other schools. And other schools, it varied from what the requirements were. And it was tough for essentially about a year and a half, but we were able to make it through and emerge to now, we're back to almost normal, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that it stays this way.
Yeah, last interview I was actually talking to the basketball coach here at CCM, Coach Aubry, and he told me that people cannot use the coronavirus as an excuse because everyone went through it. I guess you can also agree with that with softball, with anything, really.
True. The only negative thing was the fact that my predecessor, Greg, when we talked about the team, he said, I have no idea how good this team will do. He said, we have 4 pitchers without much experience. We have a few good hitters, and we wound up playing a season, and we went 19-3. And unfortunately, we were not able to go to the regionals, and we had such a strong team. It would have been nice to have gone to the regionals, but, that's the way things happen.
I'm assuming regionals couldn't happen just because you couldn't have that many people in one spot.
Well, actually, what happened was we would have to have gone out of state, and they were looking down on doing that. At one point, in fact, they didn't want us going to far south Jersey, to Cumberland, et cetera. So that was sort of the negative aspect of it.
So how did COVID affect the players and I guess maybe their mindset and their drive towards actually playing?
Well, some people decided, well, there's too many things going on. It's just another obstacle. So I'm not even going to bother playing softball. Others said, well, I'll play softball. I don't want to have to be masked, and it is an issue for some doing that. And others said, well, we'll just do what we need to. So, it covered the gamut in terms of how they were dealing with it.
Yeah.
But they were dealing with it. They took the lead from the coaches, and the advantage we had last year was the fact that we had 4 coaches. I mean, Greg, we knew he was going to be retiring, but he had 3 assistant coaches, all of which are really head coaches. And Greg had said, gee, if I knew things were going to go so well, maybe I should have stayed another year and not moved to California so early.
What are some of the accomplishments CCM softball has made since you started coaching, and also maybe even while you were assistant coach in the past?
Well, in the past, it was being viable, have enough of the players come out and play. In the fall, you'll get high numbers. It'll be lesser in the spring. But as I said previously, many of the players have gone on to play at 4-year schools and have really good careers. If you look at what happened with the 2021 team, we have probably about 6 to 8 girls that are playing right now for Division III, and they're having great times as they're pursuing, the end point of their career. So I'd say that's a good accomplishment. Now, prior to my coming on board in 2019, the team had probably its best year ever, going to the national championship down in Mississippi. And that's a pride they have. Plus, Greg had one of the most solid programs in New Jersey and in the region.
So then, what does it mean to put in 100% as a coach yourself and a player?
Well, the one thing is players don't realize that a coaching position like this, about 80% of it is administrative, and it has nothing to do with what you're doing on the field. There's so much behind the scenes activities that go on. The tough thing these days is that there is a new junior college and NCAA requirement for bat compression testing, which is very time consuming in terms of all that type of stuff. But in terms of putting the effort in, the question is, what have we achieved? Have we seen improvement in the team? Have we seen improvement in the individual's performance? Are they getting an idea what they may want to do in the future in terms of a career? And I've had several different careers, so I would like to guide them or sort of give them, let's say, a caution as to what to expect once you get out in the working world. But the other thing, too, is can you mesh your avocation with your vocation? I would hope that those that, once they're done with their softball careers, continue to stay involved, maybe as a coach, as a parent, or what have you. So,
do you have any suggestions for students who are interested in becoming a coach in the future?
Probably the most important thing as a coach is playing on different teams and seeing how the coaches work and run things, because you will find the gamut in coaches. You have the screamers, you have those that don't say anything, you have those that are very insightful, and the players, they all have their preference as to the type of style of a coach. But the thing is, coach as an assistant coach at different levels, okay? and learn you're not just dealing with the sport and who wins the game, but you're dealing with the individual and get to know them a little bit better.
So what are the major differences between an assistant coach and a coach in terms of, well, I guess being out on the field during a game or even in practice? What would you say the key differences are?
The assistant coach shows up, okay, maybe hits ground balls, works on the technique. The head coach is spending all day worrying about the administrative side. You know, who am I reporting to? Am I evaluating the umpires? Am I trying to reschedule the game? Does the tarp go on today? Am I looking at recruits that have signed, they've gotten online and they filled out the form saying I'm interested in the school? What are we doing for the future? Are we doing fundraising? Yeah. Are we going to Florida? You know, and on and on. And that's the thing that the players never see.
Would you say both jobs are equally as difficult in their own ways?
The administrative side is very time consuming. Okay, on the field, I think it's a little bit easier if you've been doing this for a while. And you know, and although some of my players don't realize, I mean, I've been involved with fast pitch softball since the 1970s, and I've been coaching for more than 20 years. So the thing is that, you know, my feeling is I prefer to delegate it to my assistant coaches to do more of the on-field and let them talking and stuff, where I do the little tweaks here and there. I look at the overall picture as to where things are going.
Anything else related to the legacy you want to leave behind as CCM softball coach?
It's interesting because somebody once told me when it comes to players and it comes to the parents, to some you're their savior and to some you're the devil incarnate. So just the fact, years down the road, to see how they've done and where they end up. I'm no longer at the College of Mount St. Vincent, but I text probably once a week to 8 of my former players how they're doing. You know, we're talking about 2 live in Hawaii, several live in California, et cetera. You know, where are their careers going? Some of my private students, you know, a bunch of them have become physical therapists for some reason. Who's a nurse? Who's raising a family? You know, I had an all-state pitcher at Whippany Park High School. She's a nurse now, but she gave birth about 3 months ago. So I told her, well, your daughter gets her first pitching lesson for free. It's just a matter of when. She's a little young, I think. So I said, tell me about your daughter. She said, she has very long fingers. I said, good. She can be a very effective pitcher as a result of that. But the thing is that tracking them where they're at, because you're just not coaching them for the sport. And this is something a lot of players don't realize. You know, hopefully as they continue their careers, they'll find out.
So let's go back and talk about your past career. How are you able to juggle your past careers with softball?
Well, it's like somebody asked me today in a text message, don't you ever sleep? Because I send text messages out at, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And you juggle it to the degree, what's the hottest and highest priority for now? What are you doing in the future? And you have to blend in, you know, family activities too. And it's just a matter of, I don't watch TV in terms of a lot of shows in the evening. You know, I'll watch sporting events for the most part, or maybe old Star Trek reruns or something like that. So my feeling is my priorities are on the career, continuing on, seeing how well the team can do, see how well my private softball students can do, and knowing that, you know, I'll take this for as long as I can. Also looking at the environmental piece and can I become more involved again, because, you know, my specialty of air quality and air pollution is a real hot topic, and maybe that's, you know, one of the things I'm destined in the future to be getting more actively involved in.
So let's talk about how you started a business, right? Epic Academy? Is that?
Well, what happened is that around the year 2000, I said, gee, I was working at a consulting firm. Why don't I start an environmental consulting business? And I started that in 2000. And what's happened over the years is that I'd be doing consulting, and then I get hired on a contract, or I get hired full-time. But the whole industry, I supported the manufacturing industry, which essentially has decreased substantially in New Jersey and in the U.S. So, you know, at the time when we came around to the year 2008, all of a sudden the economy was bottoming out. And I was doing some softball on the side. I was giving pitching lessons on the side. And my wife said, why don't you get more actively involved? And that's what I did. And then people like my predecessor here, Greg Wardwell, said, hey, why don't you become a, you know, fall ball coach for me? And, you know, essentially my name got out there and people started to see. My business, which Epic Sports Academy in Sterling has been around for 10 years. We've never done advertising. It's all been word of mouth. And what is my best advertising? Watch my pitching students, okay? You know, pitching at Hofstra, pitching at Ramapo College, pitching at, I think, 15 different high schools. And that's how you get success doing stuff like that. And so the business is really still a twofold business, environmental consulting to a certain degree, but mainly softball training.
So the fact that you really didn't have any advertising besides your students, did that turn out to be pretty successful, or do you wish you could go into the past and maybe advertise yourself or market yourself a little more?
As people said, gee, you should advertise more, I said, I prefer not to be giving lessons between 3 and 4 in the morning. As it is now, when somebody calls me or contacts me about wanting lessons, they'll say, do you have availability? And I don't know that I've ever said no, but it becomes a juggling act. If you think about it, what happens is as they progress through their careers, once they get into high school and beyond, there's less need for your private instructor, okay? But there's always new students coming in that supplants the loss of potential students.
So it all worked out.
It works out, and it continues to work out. And there's some weeks you're saying, you know, and for the first 3 months of this year, it was totally insane because my high school students all want lessons like crazy. My college students, a few of them wanted lessons. The junior school students wanted lessons. I have girls playing on so many different club teams too, so it's like, you know, what works. And now this is a tough time. The month of April is devoted totally to CCM softball, and they realize getting lessons is probably not going to happen except in a rare case. So.
This concludes another edition of CCM All Access. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Mitchell.
Thank you.